Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. In case you're new here, my name is Sky, and today's video is super special because I'm wanting to talk about my 20s lessons and my experiences that I kind of gathered over my 20s. I'm in my 30s now, and I've had time to reflect. And people do these videos here on YouTube and even online, and they share their lessons and things they wish they knew and all that. Because for me, looking back at my 20s, I'm not going to say that I feel regret, because there's some things that only time and experience can teach you. And now I can look back and say, okay, I wish I did this and this, I wish I didn't do this and this. But at the time, I was going at my pace, and here in this video I'll be sharing my experiences specifically around career and finance, around relationships and social interaction, and around physical, mental and emotional well-being. Just to make it easier, I'm going to split this series into 3 parts, 3 short easy to digest parts. So one part will be under career and finance, the second part will be under social interactions and relationships, while the last part will be around your physical, mental and emotional well-being, because I wanted to really dive into these different areas of my 20s, sharing what I think, what I went through, my experiences, my background and all that, just in case it helps anybody out there who's in their 20s or even 30s or whatever. Because you know, life, you never stop learning, right? You never stop learning, and it doesn't matter how old you are or how young you are or even how smart you are. Like, you know, guidance always helps. Like, looking back, there's some things that if I had advice or guidance, maybe I might have made like different choices. So that's what I'm hoping that these videos or this series of videos will be about. Because let me tell you guys, adulting, entering into your adulthood, it's a whole different ball game. Adulting and adulthood is a whole different ball game. So I'm hoping that these videos can help anybody. This is not life advice. I don't give advice. I'm not an advice person, because I feel like I'm also trying to still figure out my life. And you know, even though people give you advice, if you take the advice, it doesn't necessarily mean that you get the same results that they take or that they got rather. So these are just basically lessons and experiences that I feel like most people might be able to relate to. So that's what this series and this video is about. So this very first part, I'll be talking about career, finance and all that. So let's get into the video. So let me start with a little bit of work history. For me, I started working very early. Like, before I got into proper employment, you know how when you're small or if you're a teenager, most people that grew up in my kind of background, most of us started out doing small side hustles, going on errands. Me, I could do hair because my mom had a salon growing up, so I could do hair. You know, with time I learned makeup. So I was always doing those things on the side, hustling, selling this, selling that. Like, if I got to the market and I got something and the thing was nice, if anybody asks me, oh, where did you buy it from? Can I buy it off of you? I'll always sell it. So I call all those hustles. They're not necessarily work, but they were hustles. But I'm talking about paid employment. So I started paid employment very early, maybe 19 or thereabouts. It was very early. My first job was in sales, and I didn't know what I was doing. Like, that was my first entrance into, you know, the corporate space, so to speak. And my role was very little. I didn't care. I wanted the job. I didn't care how much. Salary there was 20,000 naira. That was like really small. It wasn't even up to my expenses for the month. Even transport. That's because my workplace then and where my parents used to live was very far from each other. So I didn't care. I just wanted to get into work, and I wanted to get into, you know, official hustle. So over the years, I did sales, I did marketing, and one thing that I will advise, but my very first lesson that I think I can share with people who are in their 20s, is to get a job. What I mean by get a job, I don't mean hustling, I don't mean all of this, but get a proper job if you can. You hear about the Americans, how they say, oh, when I was 16, I got a job in McDonald's. It's a very good experience. There are things that you never learn out on these entrepreneurship streets, or let me say, it will be harder for you to learn, even though you can still learn it. But getting paid employment will teach you basic things like, you know, routine, discipline, you know, teamwork. You'll be able to work in a structure where, you know, there's a set goal for the organization, then your department has a goal, and then down to your own individual KPI, and you learn how to report every day and do certain tasks and get rewarded for it and get paid at a fixed time, earn your own money for the work. So there's a direct correlation with your efforts and what you do every day, and then your salary, and then you grow like that. So that kind of structure is something that I feel like if you're in your 20s, or if you're getting your first job or starting out life, that experience is very valuable. Like, I feel like I learned the most, or let me say, whatever it is I know now, I learned the bulk of it, you know, in the proper official corporate workspace. So if you're in your 20s, absolutely get a job. It doesn't matter what job it is, doesn't matter how big or small the company is, it doesn't matter what the role is, because this is not the time for you to be too picky. What you want to get at this point is experience in a proper structured place. Now, this is not for everybody, obviously, but I'm just saying, if you can get it, get a proper job, get it. It's very important. The next lesson that I want to share, if you're in your 20s, let me assume that you started hustling or you started a job. Your priority at this stage is to learn. Learn. Unfortunately, we live in an era where most people, they start out life because of the internet. They think if you're in your 20s, you should be balling and living a certain lifestyle. While that might be true for some people, I feel like in your 20s, when you're pursuing opportunities or work, prioritize learning. Like if they recruit you, for example, for a sales role, for instance, it doesn't mean you should just stick to what you've been recruited for. If you're in a company, try to learn as much as you can across roles. If you're watching a program or see something online, your 20s is the best time for you to gather as much learning as you can. Like open your head, open your brain and learn. Forget about, I know fashion is exciting and social media and all of this, play is good, but learning is your priority in your 20s. It's going to serve you well if you prioritize learning in your 20s. The third lesson I want to share for people in their 20s, and this is a little controversial, some people might not agree, and this is for me a regret. This is something I didn't do and I wish I did. Or let me say I didn't do it as well as I should have, and that would be to change jobs often. Now let me explain. So I started working, like I said, in sales, and I was in that company for 4 years. Actually, before the sales role, I started in the factory actually. So I was in the factory for a few years. Actually, the factory works, you guys. Long story. But yeah, so after the factory job, I got the sales role, and I was there for 4 years. And even though the job was challenging, looking back now, I could see that I did mostly the same thing for that 4 years, and it was not the smartest thing to do looking back now. So if you're in your 20s and you've gotten a job or gotten a role, I suggest you 2-3 years, I feel, is the max, and 3 years is pushing it. If you know what you're doing and you're smart and you prioritize learning and you're giving value in that role, I'm not saying you should just go in and get learning and go out. Of course, if they give you a job or someone gives you a job or an opportunity, learn all you can, give value. But 2 years, I feel 2-3 years should be the max for you to be in a job. I stayed there for 4 years and then changed jobs, right? And in my next job, I also stayed for long. I stayed for 6 years, you guys. And looking back now, I kind of regret it, but at the same time, I was lucky because I didn't do the same thing for all 6 years, right? So I started in general marketing. I was there for 2 years, and then an opportunity came up, and then I kind of switched roles and became brand manager, country manager for a particular brand, which I did for 4 years. So I changed roles within the 6 years, but at the same time I spent 6 years in the company. Now looking back now, if I could go back in time, I don't think I'll give that much time to one particular company, because every company is different, right? And as a 20-year-old, like I said, you're prioritizing learning and development, so we are going to learn a lot from different companies. So changing jobs, I feel, is a good way for you to get those experiences from different places. And now looking back, my colleagues at the time who would change jobs every 2-3 years, they were climbing so quickly. If, for example, you get like an entry-level job, and then you guys start, maybe like you are 4 or 5 people in a team and you all get a job at the same time, you find that the people who change jobs 2-3 years, in the future, they seem to have a higher position than you that stay in a role for 6 years. Especially if you don't change roles. Like, they can maybe increase your salary or promote you or whatever, but unless your roles are changing significantly, I don't advise anybody to stay in one particular job. A 20-year-old, people in their 20s, starting out life, starting out their careers, I don't advise that you stay in a place, in one role for too long. That's one thing I'm going to say regarding this. So change jobs, don't feel bad, change jobs after even that you've learned enough from one role and from one company, and that you've given enough value. Don't be afraid to change jobs. While you are changing jobs, the next lesson I'm going to share is for you to figure out a career path that you're trying to tow. And while you're changing jobs, change jobs that are in line. If, for example, you want to be an accountant, for instance, or maybe you want to like build a career in the finance field, there is no point you changing jobs and taking an engineering job or an HR job or something in the admin department or something. Like, it kind of derails your progress, in the sense that when someone goes through your CV, years down the line, it looks like your experiences are like all over the place. Even though they say yes, no knowledge is wasted, but it's more like it's smarter for you to pick jobs and pick roles and companies that are kind of in line with what you're trying to do. If you know a certain career path that you know you want to get to eventually, pick roles and pick jobs that you know will give you the required skills that you need to get there. There's no point just going off tangent and taking just any job, even if the pay is good. Like, I was in sales, and then I was in marketing, and then I was in brand management, and the next job I took was in business development, which is kind of sales and marketing combined. So I didn't really go totally off. If, let's say for example, you want to be a filmmaker or a film producer, while going in your career in your 20s, pick like roles, look for jobs like within the film industry. Doesn't matter if it's a camera person, at least you're learning skills that are relevant to what you're trying to achieve in the future. Don't just take job just for the hell of it. And in case you don't really know where you're trying to go career-wise, because this is very, very common. In your 20s, you just want to work. Like for me, I just wanted to work. I was just happy going to work. I didn't care, you know, I didn't really think about this in a strategic manner, which is like one regret that I have. I didn't really pick jobs or take jobs with any great strategy in mind. That's one bad thing about not having guidance. You just keep going and doing trial and error as you go. But if you're watching this video in your 20s, one lesson that I want to share with you, or one advice that I want to give, even though I said I'm not going to advise anybody, but I'm strongly advising you to get a mentor. I know this is very controversial because not all mentors are born equal, as they say. So mentors will help you, while some might not help you. But when I say a mentor, you don't have to know the person like in real life. It could be somebody whose career you like, somebody whose career path or whose achievements you admire. Let's say, for example, when I was very young, I liked Oprah Winfrey a lot. Like, I feel like she's one of my mentors in a way, in the sense that even at the time, I knew I wanted to do something media related eventually, but I didn't know how, right? But I just knew that I liked how she kind of took charge of her career, and I would go back and read her story in the magazines. Like every interview she had, I'll read it just to see where she came from and how she started. So that's one way to go about it. If you can get a direct mentor, somebody you speak to, someone that you know, even your workplace or even outside, it's fine. There are so many articles and even videos here on YouTube on how to find a mentor and how to approach and get a mentor. That's not my field. I personally didn't have a one-on-one mentor, but now in hindsight, going back, I can see that good mentors are very beneficial. Not only will they kind of show you a roadmap, because they themselves, they've walked that path and you've seen that they've succeeded at it, so you can more or less shadow what they're doing. Again, this doesn't mean that you're going to get the same results that they've gotten, but a mentor or somebody going ahead of you in the same path to kind of show you how to go, where to go, and what to do. And then you can then decide on, you don't have to follow every single step that it took. And if you're looking to get a direct mentor, someone who, take you in the hand, what a mentor does for you is to help you get jobs, for example, help you seek opportunities. If there are places where a mentor sees that you might benefit from, a mentor can plug you in. We live in the era where, connections help, right? If you don't have connections from your family or your direct friends, a mentor could be one resource that you can use if you're in your 20s to help grow your career. So this is very important. Again, this doesn't mean that you can't succeed without a mentor. It's just that a good mentor will help you be more specific and more strategic in how you move your career. While you are growing in your career in your 20s, one thing that looking back now I regret not doing is recording everything. So my lesson or my advice here is for you to record everything. This will come to save you, not just in form of protection, because as you're working, there will be times when people will say things they don't mean or mean things they don't say. Recording things will also kind of pad up your CV. It's like if you claim that you've done a certain task or something in your workplace, having records of its pictures, documents, email trails, these are very, very important. Like, it's going to save you. There'll be times when having records or keeping records of something that you've done or said or something that someone said to you or did for you, or if you're part of a project, keep personal records. Keep them, not just in the company email, because back in the day we just send an email and that's it. It's when maybe you're leaving a job that you now remember that you want to take things out and put in your flash drive. Have a flash drive or a hard drive, or if you're someone who likes to save things in the cloud, we live in that era now, have things saved. Record every single thing, everything you do in your work. If you go on trips, for example, even pictures with your colleagues, pictures for events, whatever it is that you're doing, take record keeping very, very seriously. This is real life advice. I regret there are so many things I did during my my work era that I don't have physical records of. That just I have it somewhere in my CV, and I'm sure if you go to the company or somewhere you see the record somewhere, but I have no personal records of those things in my own box, which I regret seriously. So yeah, keep records of everything. If someone says something to you in an office, if you're working in a place and someone says, and this is the same, like I kind of picked up this habit later and I kind of use it even now. If you have a meeting with somebody or someone tells you something or there's a phone call or whatever, have a follow-up email or write it down and said, okay, according to our discussion, you said this will help keep you in track, keep the person in track, and everybody's clear on what to do. So it will help you build clarity, it will keep your records for yourself, not for your company, and it should just make everything clear. That's one advice and one lesson that I actually learned in my 20s. So in your 20s, you are exposed to so many people when you start working, when you start hustling. And one thing I want to say here is for you to build relationships with people. Like, nobody likes the colleague that's an asshole, or a colleague who is sloppy, or who is not good at work, or who fights with everyone in the company. I was lucky enough to work in companies both small and big, and one thing that I learned is the value of network, the value of relationships with people, because time will come in the future when you might have to reference something, or they're looking for something and it's a former colleague or whatever. Like in your 20s, you don't even know where life is taking you. You don't know where you're going. You don't know what will happen career-wise and even generally speaking. So it's not going to pay you to start burning bridges in your 20s. Your 20s is not the time for you to burn bridges. If you're working or if you're doing any sort of hustle, keep relationships. Like, you don't have to be best friends with everybody in your workplace, obviously, but make sure you are cordial with as much people as you can. Be respectful. Make sure you are that person that your bosses, like, you can call up your boss 5 years, 10 years down the line, and then they'll remember you fondly and they will give you audience. This is very important because your 20s, you're just starting out, you don't even know, like, you literally don't know the workplace, or let me say, business generally is like a train station. People are coming and going. You are also coming and going. You don't know where you meet the person, even if you don't meet the person, right? So building relationships is very, very important. For me, my job was both inward and outward facing, in the sense that I had my colleagues and my bosses in-house, and I also had agencies and distributors and whatever. I tried to make sure that I'm friends, maybe not friends, but I try to be cordial with all those people, because right now as I speak, years has passed, but I'm still in touch with a lot of people. And if I needed anything, if I was pressed for any information or any kind of help, and I wanted help as far as business is concerned, if I sit down and start calling people, I'll definitely get the help that I want. This is years later in my 30s. So, and that is because while we were in our 20s, we were able to build a decent relationship. This is very, very important. The next lesson that I wish I learned earlier, and I'm going to advise you guys right now in your 20s, 30s, whatever, is to take financial literacy seriously, like basic financial literacy. Like I said, in your 20s, most of us are just eager to work. I don't care about, I get a salary, put it in the bank. When I have bills, I pay. I want to buy something, I buy. Things like investment, things like taxes, things like, for those of you who are out west in the US and the UK, we hear about credit system a lot. You have a credit system there. Many people don't even know how to build credit, or feel like I have to earn a certain amount to care about credit. And when I hear people who live out west talk about how much a good credit has done for them, like I wish I was in that place. So if you're out west, take advantage of the credit system. Try to understand how taxes work. Try to understand how savings, how investment work. I felt like in my time, all I needed to do was just put money in the bank. That's it. But now, in this day and time, you have so much resources at your fingertips to learn investments, savings, you name it, mutual funds, so many things you can learn right now. About finance. You don't have to be like a finance guru. Like, you don't even have to do anything with the knowledge per se, but having basic financial knowledge will help you as you're entering your 30s. As you're earning, you know what you're earning for, you know how you can optimize what you're earning, you know how you can, how to think about money from a good place. So yeah, getting financial knowledge in your 20s helps. Absolutely, absolutely helps. This next tip I'm going to say is one of the most important, and this I learned it later in life, and I'm still struggling with it now actually. And this is very hard, but when they say fortune favors the bold, it's absolutely true. My last lesson in this part of this video, my last lesson to you if you're in your 20s, 30s, whatever, is to have audacity. Because looking back now, the people in the company who promotions and opportunities favored the most. So people who would speak out, people who would, and looking back now, I had a boss who told me this so many times, but I just couldn't, it's just not my personality to be so forward. But people who are audacious, people who, if for example there's an opportunity in the company, they'll go forth and ask for it. If they're training, they'll volunteer to go. Those were the people who were getting those opportunities the more. Just to refer back to my history. So when I was in the company where I said I spent 6 years, and I said I changed roles after 2 years, from general marketing I became brand manager. That role, I didn't seek for it. So my boss at the time, my MD at the time actually, he was a guy who would interact with everybody. So he would talk to from the janitor up to, he was that kind of person. So at different times when we had spoken, he came to know that I liked anything beauty, fashion. If you meet me in person, if you know me in real life, most people know that I like things like that. So he knew that I had particular passion and talent in that field. So when the company at the time was going to go into that opportunity, it was like a partnership with another company that was abroad. So they needed somebody who had skills in skincare, luxury skincare specifically. So in my department, so he just called me one day and said, yeah, we're doing XYZ. The company is going this direction. We are thinking of doing this. Are you interested in this role? You'll be responsible for XYZ. And at the time, I didn't even know the scale at which this job was going to be at. But I just knew this was something I liked and it was specific. I was going to be brand manager. I didn't even know that I was going to become country manager, you know. And that role, they gave me that role. Next thing I knew, I said, yeah, sure. Next thing I knew, I got my letter from HR. Next thing I knew, they said training. Next thing I knew, you know, they gave me the dossier for the brand. Like the rep from the company came into the country and then we met with them and it was a whole new world. That was what kind of took me off on a whole different era. Like I blew up basically. And I went on to do so well in that job. Looking back now, if that man hadn't seen me and taken pity, maybe not pity, but like if he hadn't handpicked me for that role, I was that person who would just be there and then maybe somebody else would get the opportunity, even though I know I could do the job, even though I know I'll be excellent at it as I went on to be. Like it was a job that, like, I won awards for it. Like that was the job that took me abroad for the first time, and all the times after then, it was my best amazing time. I learned so much. I did PR for the brand. I did everything from scratch because the brand hadn't been in Nigeria at the time. So I did so much work. I grew so much. I learned so much. And if they hadn't given me the opportunity, that's again that thing I said about relationships. Don't be an unpleasant person, because if I was someone that wasn't doing my job well, who wasn't serious with my work, who wasn't delivering, then they won't even consider me. I say all this to say that you might get lucky and someone will give you an opportunity, but looking back now, when I was working, it's the colleagues who were very, very vocal about their work. If you do anything, I was too humble. If you do any work, however little, document it, broadcast it. Then you know how nowadays there are Slack channels where people can share stuff in companies. Back in my time, we didn't have we didn't have Slack, but we had like email channels where companies, because it was a multinational, so we had like channels where, like, all over the world, people could post what was going on in their respective offices. So you see colleagues who post about, oh, I did this initiative, I did this market launch, or I did this and did this. And that's the people that you see that everybody's hailing that they're doing work. At the end of the day, if you're in your 20s, just learn that it doesn't matter how much work you do. It matters how much people see that you're doing. Like, as you're working and learning and growing and delivering, make sure that people that matter are seeing you. Make sure that they know what you're doing. That's why, again, documenting is very important. Make sure that nobody can claim credit for your work. Like, sometimes some people work in companies where their bosses take credit for their work and they don't have any way to prove that you did that work. Yes, competence is important, and if you've done the work, you've done the work. But it's important that everyone knows that you've done the work, if you know what I mean. So absolutely, be audacious. If there's any training that you know that you need in your work to excel, walk up to your boss and say, oh boss, I'm thinking of XYZ. If your company has budget for training, most companies would have it, however little. Ask to go for that training, and then of course, if they train you for that job, give back value, obviously. But ask for training. If there's any competition, enter for it. If there's any extracurricular activity that the company is doing, get involved. Be audacious, speak out. Don't just be this colleague who go to the back and gossip and momo. Be that person who, when you are there, they know you're there, your presence is felt, your work is seen by everybody, and it's undeniable that you know what you're doing. You know how, thinking back now, if you're working now, you can also testify. Leave me a comment if that's your experience. Think about the colleagues in your office who are very competent, who everybody knows that this person is very good. Like, even if the entire company is empty and this person is there, there's trust that this person knows what they're doing. So be that employee, be that person, and take your career seriously in your 20s. Even though, yes, I'm going to share other aspects of 20s, like the less serious aspects that are also equally important. But as far as career and finance goes, take yourself seriously, prioritize learning, prioritize competence. This is the time for you to build competence. Like, for your bosses and your colleagues to respect you and for you to get opportunities that will propel you forward, be that employee or be that person who is highly skilled, highly competent. Those are two things you should prioritize: skills, competence, learning, being a good employee, giving value wherever you are, and making sure that you're audacious and making sure that your work is speaking and everybody knows what you're doing. That's my little career advice or my career lessons from my 20s. If you have similar experiences or your own different points of view, let me know in the comment section. I'll be very happy to interact with you guys there. Give this video a thumbs up if you found it helpful in any way. Even if you didn't, give it a thumbs up because it helps my channel and it helps the video. And of course, subscribe in case you haven't. And I'm going to see you in the part 2 and 3 of this series, Lessons I Learned in My 20s. Bye, guys.